In the previous episode, Elijah uncovered his mother's plan and used Elena's life to threaten the Salvatore brothers into breaking the stalemate. However, the Salvatore brothers had their own strategy. If they could stall until tonight's full moon, all of the originals would perish, but Elena was still in the hands of the originals. Fortunately, Damon had a dagger capable of sealing them. Both Elijah and Rebekah knew they couldn't make a move, and Klaus was too formidable to target, leaving Cole as the ideal target. Since the lives of the originals are connected, sealing Cole with the dagger would seal the others as well. Given that Klaus was an unpredictable factor, the Salvatore brothers decided to use seduction as a tactic. At that moment, Klaus and Cole were drinking together, and Caroline's sudden appearance immediately caused Klaus to forget about his brother. A skilled hunter often presents themselves as the prey. Caroline feigned indifference and turned to leave.
Isn't she stunning? She certainly looks good walking away from you. I'll take that as a challenge.
She walked slowly, knowing Klaus would follow. As expected, Klaus took the bait, hoping Caroline would give him a chance to understand her better. To buy time, Caroline agreed, and they sat on a bench by the street to chat. Meanwhile, because they didn't have a white oak stake, Esther set up a pentagram. Once the full moon appeared, she planned to reverse the spell that created the originals, turning Finn back into a human. If Finn died, the other originals would perish as well.
My mother's released me from an eternity of shame. It's not a sacrifice, it's a gift.
Elsewhere, Cole took advantage of Alaric's absence to flirt with Fel. Unaware that this was a trap, Alaric returned with the dagger and easily sealed the arrogant Cole. At the same time, the other originals were sealed as well, except for Klaus. But then, he felt a sharp pain in his chest and looked at Caroline with disappointment. Caroline's mission was merely to distract Klaus, and she was clueless about this unexpected turn of events. Klaus immediately realized that something was wrong with Cole. Just as the Salvatore brothers were about to take Cole away, Klaus arrived in time to remove the dagger sealing Cole. Klaus was truly enraged, and just as he was about to strike, Elijah intervened with a harsh reprimand to stop him.
We still need him, Klaus.
Esther would surely be wary of the originals, but only the Salvatore brothers could catch her off guard. Once again, Elijah used Elena's life as leverage, and the Salvatore brothers had no choice but to compromise. During their journey, the Salvatore brothers began to disagree again. To break Esther's spell, either Bonnie or her mother must die, but they knew Elena too well. She would rather sacrifice herself to save her friends.
If we do this, it'll wreck her. Oh, she'll hate us. Thing is, she'll just hate one of us.
Instead of both taking the blame, it would be better for one person to bear the burden alone, while the other enjoys Elena's love. They decided to flip a coin to make the choice. Meanwhile, in the tunnel, Elena seized the opportunity to escape into the barrier, a place even the originals couldn't enter.
No vampires allowed.
Elena waited for a long time, hearing nothing from outside. Could Rebekah have left? Just as a nervous Elena was about to step out, Rebekah returned, carrying a gasoline can. Without hesitation, she poured the gasoline all over Elena.
You're gonna come outside. Or you're gonna stay in there and burn.
The fate of all vampires hinges on tonight's battle. Even before Esther's ritual began, 3 of the original vampires had already arrived. Bonnie and her mother hurriedly took shelter in the ancestral home. Esther stepped into the magical circle, keeping the originals at bay. Esther looked at her children, knowing she had created these monsters, and today, it would be up to her to end them. Cole, ever the impatient one, hurled curses at his mother and older brother. Elijah hoped that his mother would change her mind, but Esther stood firm, declaring that her greatest regret was not destroying them 1,000 years ago. It turned out that during her 1,000 years of exile in the liminal world, Esther's soul had constantly watched the originals. She felt the pain of every victim they killed. Even Elijah had a dark past, and aside from Finn, the other 4 originals were guilty of countless atrocities. The number of souls lost to them was beyond counting. Meanwhile, in the witch's ancestral home, Bonnie tells her mother that witches' spirits protect the place and the originals cannot enter, but the Salvatore brothers could enter, and Stefan's sudden appearance startled Bonnie. After explaining Elena's situation, Stefan's eyes turned cold, and a murderous intent emanated from him. Bonnie quickly realized what was happening. Stefan intended to kill her to sever Esther's source of power, but Damon was faster. He forced Abby to drink his blood and then snapped her neck. At the same time, Esther lost her connection to the power of the witch spirits, causing the magical circle to collapse. Finn took his mother away in the chaos. The originals had narrowly escaped death, but Elijah was far from pleased, as his mother had just stripped away his facade. After hearing the news, Rebekah no longer troubled Elena, but she knew how to wound without killing. She told Elena about Abby being turned into a vampire by Damon. Elena was shocked, then overwhelmed with grief and anger. Though Rebekah had left, Elena remained in the barrier for a long time, unsure of how to face Bonnie. When Elena finally gathered the courage to visit Bonnie, she was stopped at the door by Caroline.
Everything that happened tonight was to save you. And that's okay because she loves you so much.
Bonnie had sacrificed too much for Elena. Tonight, Damon played the villain, which was tantamount to handing Elena over to his brother. There was something Stefan couldn't understand. When they had flipped the coin to decide, Stefan had clearly lost, so the role of the villain should have been his. It was only then that Stefan realized his brother had seen through his secret, that he was trying to become his old self again. But Stefan remained stubborn, insisting that the person he used to be was dead. Damon wasn't having it and pressed Stefan, asking when the last time he drank human blood was. Stefan confessed that it was when he used Elena's life to threaten Klaus. That had been some time ago. Stefan also saw through his brother, recognizing that Damon had chosen to play the villain to distance himself from Elena, but still loved her. Damon admitted it without hesitation.
She didn't want me. It's for the best. I'm better at being the bad guy anyway.
When Elena returned home, she found an apology letter from Elijah. He was ashamed of his actions but didn't regret them because he did it to protect his family. Although Elijah had become an enemy of his mother, he agreed with what she had said. Rebekah couldn't understand why Elijah's heart had softened. We are the originals, vampires, and in a world where the strong prey on the weak, there is no need for sympathy. Elijah had made up his mind he was ready to leave this family. Klaus was the most hurt by this. Elijah had left, Cole had run off, and now only his little sister remained by his side. After all the twists and turns, love and betrayal, he was back where he started. Rebekah then showed her brother a video she had taken while guarding Elena. The images on the stone wall depicted another white oak. Klaus says outright that it's impossible, as they already burned that white oak tree. Rebekah suspected that there must have been another sapling that grew to replace the old tree.
That tree could kill us. It's not over, Nick.
Meanwhile, Alaric woke up to find himself in Fell's house. On Fell's desk, there were detailed files on 3 murders, along with a weapon. Could she be the serial killer? At that moment, Fell had already woken up.
You weren't supposed to see that.
Alaric was shot by Fell and then arrested by Sheriff Forbes. Even though Alaric was the one who had been attacked, Damon came to bail him out, but Sheriff Forbes informed them that Fell believed Alaric might have stabbed himself to divert suspicion, and the weapons from the 3 murders all belonged to him. Elena rushed to the station when she heard, hoping Damon would help her clear Alaric's name, but Damon acted cold and distant, determined to sever ties with Elena for his brother's sake.
I mean, you hate me. The Earth is back on its axis.
You know, if you keep pushing people away, you're gonna end up alone.
Though he appeared indifferent, Damon went home and immediately pulled his brother into investigating the murders. If they could solve this, Stefan would be the biggest beneficiary. The Salvatore brothers recalled a memory from the past. It turns out that a century ago, there was a serial killer in Mystic Falls who targeted members of the council, and their nephew was one of the victims. To attend their nephew's funeral, the Salvatore brothers both returned to Mystic Falls. It had been 50 years since Damon had abandoned Stefan, yet Damon still held a grudge against Stefan for turning him into a vampire. Stefan suspected that Damon was behind their nephew's death.
If I'm not mistaken, you were the one who killed our family members. May our father rest in peace.
When the brothers met, they immediately began to expose each other's old wounds, but they agreed on having a drink together. After snapping out of their memories, the brothers decided to set the case aside for the moment and head to the bar for a drink. Meanwhile, Rebekah subtly questioned Mayor Lockwood about the white oak in an attempt to find it. Carol mentioned that the white oak was likely cut down, and that the town's lumber mills were owned by the Salvatore family. Rebekah was surprised to learn that the Salvatore brothers came from a family of lumberjacks, which made her task even more difficult. She had to find out the whereabouts of the white oak without arousing their suspicion. So, Rebekah approached the brothers, casually bringing up the topic of the lumber mills. Stefan, ever perceptive, grew suspicious of Rebekah's intentions.
If you want more sex, just ask for it.
Not enough liquor in the world.
Worried that she might say too much, Rebekah shifted the conversation to the murders, asking if it was possible that a vampire was involved. Stefan suddenly remembered that there was another vampire in town at the time.
Sage.
Mentioning Sage made Damon's expression light up. Sage had been his guiding light. After the Salvatore brothers had a few drinks back then, they discovered during a boxing match that there was another vampire in town. Sage, relying on her vampire strength, was unbeatable in the boxing ring. Damon was captivated by Sage's qualities. Sage also noticed Damon, seeing him as a diamond in the rough that needed to be shaped and polished. Rebekah knew Sage too. As it turned out, elsewhere, Alaric was continuously protesting his innocence, so Sheriff Forbes asked him to recall his alibi for the 3 murders. Alaric immediately fell silent, because he couldn't remember where he had been, and no one could vouch for him.
I must have been home, sleeping. I'm sure of it.
To clear Alaric's name, Elena and Matt secretly broke into Fell's house. Inside a wardrobe, they found a hidden compartment filled with files on various families, including Alaric's records. Among them was an old journal belonging to Elena's family. They discovered a death certificate, and the time of death on it could prove Alaric's innocence. Alaric was released from jail. They conducted a physical examination on Alaric, and in the mirror, his reflection, he was staring at himself with a sinister smirk. Alaric went from puzzled to terrified, as he found himself unnerved by his own reflection. Little did they know, Alaric's dark alter ego was taking control of his body, while Elena and Fell remained completely unaware.
Everything's okay.
The examination results showed everything was normal. Fell explained to Alaric that he might have committed the murders because of the Gilbert ring. To gain Elena and Fell's trust, the dark Alaric willingly handed over his resurrection ring. At that moment, the resurrection ring seemed more like a cursed ring, with its price being the emergence of a dark personality. Elena thought that Bonnie might have a solution. After all, the resurrection ring was created by her ancestors. Just then, Damon arrived, but Elena was still upset with him for forcing Stefan to drink blood. Damon felt misunderstood, insisting that too much repression would only cause Stefan to lose control. But Elena was dismissive of his reasoning, since her mother was turned into a vampire. Bonnie hadn't contacted Elena. Caroline came to guide Abby on how to be a disciplined vampire. But Abby, deeply depressed, refused to drink blood. Becoming a vampire had cost her all her magical powers. Abby had once single-handedly sealed the father of the originals, but now she had become one of their kind. This is hard for Abby to accept. Even her adoptive son, Jamie, began to distance himself from Abby. With Caroline's patient encouragement, Jamie gathered the courage to comfort his mother, Abby. But as they embraced, Abby, driven by vampire instincts, bit Jamie and began to drink his blood greedily. Fortunately, Bonnie arrived just in time to stop her. Abby was filled with regret. Caroline healed Jamie with her blood and erased his memory of the incident. Bonnie and her mother were deeply grateful to her.
Now I need a favor.
At Caroline's request, Bonnie finally agreed to help Elena. She could concoct a potion to suppress the dark personality, but she needed a personal item of Alaric's. When Elena went to Alaric's place to retrieve the item, she was surprised to find Stefan there. Stefan had studied Elena's ancestors closely and discovered that even after Alaric removed the resurrection ring, his dark personality persisted, leading him to kill a doctor and a nurse. They also found photos of the victims in Alaric's drawer, confirming his guilt. Meanwhile, Alaric secretly disabled the sedative while Fell wasn't paying attention, his eyes cold and merciless. In addition to the victims' photos, Alaric had collected a roster of the council members, along with a letter addressed to Jeremy.
Jeremy, if anything happens to me, carry on my work. You have the other ring. Will the ring make you strong? The council must be cleansed before the work can begin.
Elena was horrified to realize that it was a death list, and Fell's name was on it. Meanwhile, Alaric finally dropped his disguise. He aggressively questioned Fell. As a member of the council, do you feel any sense of guilt for siding with vampires? Fell quickly realized the danger, but with Alaric holding a knife, she didn't dare make a move.
Because you should.
Fell's first instinct was to get the sedative, only to find that Alaric had destroyed it. Severely injured, Fell could only hide in the bathroom. Soon after, Elena and Stefan arrived. Alaric, still trying to keep up the act, was subdued by Stefan. When Elena and Stefan found Fell, she was barely alive. The overwhelming scent of blood put Stefan on high alert, but thanks to Damon's earlier training, he was able to overcome his bloodlust and fed his blood. It was then that Elena realized Damon's method was right. Later, Bonnie returned and prepared an herbal potion for Alaric, temporarily suppressing his dark personality. Elena and Bonnie finally reconciled. Elena, worried that her brother might follow in Alaric's footsteps, decided to call Jeremy, who was far away.
I just miss you.
Yeah, I miss you too.
At the heart of my mistakes. Oh, some things you can't go back.
1,000 years ago, the original vampires burned the only white oak that could kill them, but no one expected that a sapling from the white oak would survive and reappear a millennium later. After days of investigation, Rebekah set her sights on the wooden structure of Wickery Bridge, so she invested in its reconstruction, replacing the original wood. This stirred up quite a commotion, and Damon and the others were puzzled. Rebekah was hardly the type to engage in charity. At that moment, Damon spotted Sage in the crowd, his life mentor.
Damon Salvatore, my favorite student.
Sage, my hottest teacher.
It turned out that Sage had come to town after hearing that Finn had been resurrected. Her love for Finn had remained unwavering for 900 years. Rebekah had no fondness for Sage and mocked her, saying, "Finn has long forgotten about you." When Damon revealed that he wanted to uncover Rebekah's true intentions, Sage suggested they infiltrate her mind to find out. Damon, however, doubted it was possible, as Rebekah was one of the original vampires.
I bet I could get in there.
Sage, she's an original. It's not gonna happen.
Have you forgotten everything I taught you?
But with Sage's guidance, Damon's confidence soared, and he flashed a wicked grin. Later, Damon approached Rebekah, since they had already had a fling before. It only took some flattery, a bit of physical contact, and a touch of playing hard to get to leave Rebekah craving more. Back at the mansion, Damon began to lose confidence as he waited, but just as Sage predicted, Rebekah took the bait. She even stole a bottle of Klaus's finest wine. They drank, danced passionately, and in the heat of the moment, they even devoured the musicians. A famished Rebekah fell for the trap. Damon used his charm to lower Rebekah's guard, allowing Sage to probe Rebekah's mind. After obtaining the information, Sage signaled Damon to discuss it privately in the bathroom. Knowing that vampires have extraordinary hearing, Sage used her mind-linking ability to silently convey the truth to Damon. Damon learned that another white oak had survived and that his family, having monopolized the town's lumber industry, would have records of its use. Damon then searched through his family's archives and discovered that the oldest white oak had been used to build Wickery Bridge. When Damon arrived at Wickery Bridge, he found that Rebekah had already set fire to the dismantled wood. It was only then that Damon realized he was the prey, caught in a trap set by Rebekah and Sage. Sadly, Damon was no match for the original vampire nor for Sage. Although Sage and Rebekah didn't get along, Sage teamed up with Rebekah to deceive Damon, all to protect Finn. Furious, Damon threatened,
And when I do find another way to kill those originals, I'll start with Finn.
Although the Salvatore brothers are only century-old vampires, even the originals would have a tough time if they were angered, so Sage is definitely in for a rough time. The next day, Damon approached Stefan in high spirits, noticing that his brother was also in a good mood. Stefan, having control over his bloodlust, was clearly feeling triumphant, but he didn't understand why Damon was so happy after all. Damon had been played by Rebekah and Sage, and the white oak had turned to ashes. Damon began to boast. It turned out that the town's welcome sign was also made from white oak. When Rebekah and Sage were burning the bridge's wood, Damon realized what was happening. His thunderous rage was merely a deliberate act to mislead them.
Game's back on, brother.